Steffi had this very, very exciting idea that this year we basically have these art sessions scattered throughout the 2 days, and it creates a whole different energy. So it's very, very exciting. And we had earlier on Jeremy Shaw, we had Hito Steyr, Nora Khan, who talked about 21st century art practice, and Igor Levit, the pianist. We are now going to talk about what that means for institutions, and it's my immense pleasure to introduce Maja Hoffmann, who is inventing a completely new art institution in Arles, in the south of France, an institution which will actually bridge art to all the other disciplines. There is a very strong connection also, as Maja will explain to us, to ecology and sustainability. There are, in all the programs, there are two amazing buildings. There is a Frank Gehry building, which is vertical, and then there is a horizontal structure, a converted building, actually designed, converted by Annabel Seldorf. And of course, there are, Steffi mentioned archive. At the very core of Maja's activity is a very different form of collection. It's not a collection of objects, but it's actually a collection of exhibitions, and it's a collection of archives, artists' archive, all kinds of different archives. And of course, if we look at the history of exhibitions throughout the 20th century, and that's something which has become more and more relevant in the 21st century, the history of art more and more is also a history of exhibitions. So artists develop not only pieces, but they develop more holistic exhibitions, and this is exactly what is part of the LUMA archive. Please give a very, very warm welcome to Maja Hoffmann.
Thank you, Hans Ulrich. Where are we? Is this the net? Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. And let me start immediately, because I think this might go a little too long otherwise. So in 2004, I created the LUMA Foundation to support the activities of artists, independent pioneers, and organizations working in the visual art, photography, publishing, documentary, filmmaking, and other medias. And the LUMA Foundation produces, supports, and enables challenging art projects committed to a vast understanding and environmental issues. This is really important: human rights, education, and culture. So since 2010, the LUMA Foundation has created programming in Arles, which is located in the south of France, and you see the red dot, and in the Parc des Ateliers, as we called it. I already had been speaking here about this, I think 5 years ago, under the form of exhibition, monographies, group exhibitions, or exhibitions based on archive and various themes that seems particularly relevant to us. We will discuss this with Hans Ulrich after I finish this very short presentation. We, throughout the years, did this exhibition co-curated by a core group composed of 2 artists and 3 curators: Tom Eccles, Liam Gillick, Hans Ulrich Obrist, Philippe Barreno, and Beatrix Roof. And they include To the Moon via the Beach. I'm going to go through this, and we can rediscuss it with Hans Ulrich later. It was a group show in the Roman Amphitheater of Arles, and we invited Rick Ravanier, Pierre Huyghe, Daniel Buren, and Douglas Gordon, among others. Daniel Buren and Douglas Gordon. We also, the same year, asked Doug Aitken to produce a movie for us, showing various aspects of the Camargue. The Camargue constitutes the environment around Arles. And we installed this piece for everyone to see. And we opened it with a live performance by Terry Riley, which you just saw. The next show, Frank Gehry, Solaris Chronicle, was introducing and bringing the architect and a choice of his models that we chose together. closer to our audience, just to warn them of what was coming, in a raw space and before the rehabilitation started. Systematically open marked the opening of the same space after refurbishment 2 years later. It was a production with the architect Philip Ram, again the core group, and we can speak about that later, and if you have ideas, questions. We also tackled to present a collection of an artist, the archive of Tony Oslo, a collection that he had been putting together. It resulted in a movie, but it also resulted in a big book that is really like a catalogue to all of his collection. In 2017, this is one of our halls. It's called the Grande Halle. The LUMA team organized one different type of archive show within its program of living archives. Annie Leibovitz, the early years, and it was the first of a series of exhibitions we want to do with her. Living archive, she was there, and she was there to organize some group tours, and actually the foundation acquired this archive a few years ago. We were following, and this show is still on right now. Sorry, this is broken, so I'm going to look at the screen, right? It was followed by Jean Prouvé. So we wanted to install the architectures of Jean Prouvé. They are reminiscent of a time they were all produced. They are demountable systems, and they were produced after, starting to produce after the World War. And they are reminiscent of what's happening now, a day with the crisis of the migrations. We also, of the migrations induced by, you know, what the crisis of the migration is right now. So last year, which is all in 2017, we introduced the second dance residency program with LADP. This is a company, a dance company created by Benjamin Millepied. It's based in Los Angeles, and we, in a program of 3 years, invite them over in the summers, and it's resulting in new creations. And they were presented in Arles before traveling abroad. We started also in parallel, and you see the audience can just come to the rehearsals, so we are interested in the process of things. We can also organize, we are also organizing other residencies in the town for artists and curators. Now, LUMA started the regeneration, like Hans Ulrich was saying, of the Parc des Ateliers, which is a former industrial site of 6 hectares. It's located in the center of the town of Arles in France. And we started in 2014 in the aim to host our program. So 10 years after the LUMA Foundation was created. The site was and will be kept open during the full length of renovation and construction, and bordering to the town's UNESCO World Heritage Site, the Parc des Ateliers serves as the major programmatic and cultural center of the LUMA Foundation's diverse activities. It also hosts and co-hosts the International Photography of the Festival, the International Photography Festival of the Rencontres d'Arles every summer. The site includes a resource center designed by architect Frank Gehry, which will open, hopefully, if all technicalities work out as planned, in 2019 or the spring of 2020. It has various buildings that are renovated by Seldorf Architects, and we are also building a public park designed by landscape architect Bas Metz. These are the 3 renderings. The rest were all live pictures, right, or real pictures. I work closely with the LUMA AL core group, as I said, Tom Eccles, Liam Gehry, Hans-Ulrich Obrist, Philippe Pareno, and Beatrice Zumuf on the program of exhibition and multidisciplinary projects. But we also work together at the Garden and Park with the architects. We are also in the process of selecting structural elements and spaces throughout the garden and main building that we will commission to artists and designers. So they will be associated also to the structural elements of the different renovations. Here you have some examples of what we renovated. I'm not going to speak about the buildings. We also obviously tried, this was the Rencontre Photo Festival programming. You can now start to live in it, and it's really an active site, even if we are not open yet completely. Here, this building that is taking really strange shapes in the sunset. We tried with Frank to paint with architecture when we were meeting early on. And so this is actually a natural thing, a little miraculous happening at sunset, not so long ago. This The Parc des Ateliers and the surrounding Camargue are both UNESCO World Heritage Sites. You can see how the arena, which I was showing with the To the Moon show at the beginning, is now really having a funny, strong neighbor. And Arles has a strong Roman past. You can see. And it also is bordering the Camargue, which is a biosphere reserve mostly. It's a vast wetland famous for its natural resources and biodiversity. The Camargue ecology, habitats and species are protected in studies and research at the Institut des Zones Humides de la Tour du Valat, who are developing and hosting programs on local and national levels that extend throughout the Mediterranean. Birds are still nesting there. Here terns and the flamingos before. So we launched these LUMA Days last year in the spring to address the questions that might also arise in you right now. You see this new building and you see the transformation and change. And we want to accompany this transformation and change. So LUMA Days is a public engagement platform of the LUMA Foundation. It is there to provide a platform to reflect on the latest developments of the project and the future of the city and region, and wherever possible, bring ideas, impulse, and responses to questions that are arising from change. Located at the intersection of art, design, technology, activism, and ecology, LUMA Day provides an immersive environment and acts as a mediator between the local and the global. For the first year, we explored scenario of the city of Arles and its rural context. Under the title, A City in a Bioregion, in 2018, under the title, like A City in a Bioregion, that was we were providing different scenarios to how to see the future with this Arles population and also globally with the guests from outside. In 2018, we will, on the other hand, work on a topic area that expresses our concerns for contemporary values that are changing. Our working title is Hospitality, Searching for Common Ground. We believe that in the next 10 years, a cultural institution may need to redefine the parameters of its mission, whether it be to collect, to display, disseminate, preserve, or produce art and culture. In this process, the notion of culture, nation, identity, society, and hospitality becomes all become essential points of examination for any institution outlining its place in the cultural realm. In this, hospitality and social engagement stand side by side, and I believe that now more than ever, in a time of intense globalization, relations and more vivid interactions should occur between art and culture, human rights, environment, and education and research. This motto was the motto in 2004, under which the LUMA Foundation was created first. With LUMA Arles, I have then created in Arles a platform for the production of art and ideas, and we hope that it will allow for the necessary convenience. We hope it for the necessary convergence, that's what I wrote this morning, of people in order to cooperate and bring the cross-disciplinary thinking required by the era of exclusion and divisiveness we have entered. Well, LUMA Days is just the tip of the iceberg. In March 2016, we launched Atelier LUMA. It is an experimental incubator, educational hub, and design research lab of the LUMA Foundation. It is embedded within the local ecology shared between the city of Arles and the Camargue region. Atelier LUMA co-develops new way of producing and caring for a bioregion. They use design as a tool of translation and transition. The inherent mission of the program to map a community, a city and a region as a potential production worksite. That means act locally so that we do not come as invaders or even as ETs, but really create, through the social engagement, a potential production worksite that comes back to the community. So the region is actually a resource for a creative idea, for creative ideas and collective intelligence. I cannot enter more in details, but these are, for instance, produced out of algae found in the Camargue. We produce producers with salt from the Camargue, and we actually, as I said, really chose to develop this project in Arles out of the really big cities that we already know. We are far from them and closer to human scale, and this creates different possibilities. LUMA has always been committed to working with local craftsmen, builders, suppliers, as much as possible. And Atelier LUMA is designed to further this ongoing investigation of talents and resource present in Arles and in its surroundings. We hope that Atelier LUMA and its public engagement platform, the LUMA Days, can become a new interdisciplinary model in the Mediterranean, that it will produce cultural, environmental, and social change. I'm finished. Sorry.
Shall we sit down?
Yeah.
So every night, she didn't do shit when she, she can't.
They should.
Thank you so much, Maja. Another big round of applause, please, for Maja Hoffmann. Maja, maybe a first question I wanted to ask you is the sort of whole connection to the countryside, because we actually, exactly 1 year ago, at the very same moment at DLD, had Rem Koolhaas. Christopher Schläfer is here. He and Rem have since developed an amazing dialogue, and Rem proclaimed here that the future is the countryside.
Yeah.
Now, of course, your amazing LUMA project in Arles is deeply connected to the Camargue. And of course, there is also the Tour de Valla, which is this scientific station. Your father, who not only co-founded the World Wildlife Fund, which connects it to an earlier panel today, has saved the entire region ecologically. So there is always this connection to the countryside in what you do, the connection to ecology. And I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in this Camargue, and obviously it had to do with the choice of the space. I just believe that, art is a language that is more accurate than science, or at least as accurate than science to describe environment, and that it can motivate engagement in a different way than only scientists can. So I'm really happy since years to see that research can cohabitate with the way to disseminate the emotions you get through nature. And more and more, I must say, of course I'm not happy about it because it rather looks catastrophic, but more and more I must say that we are needing different ways of conveying this, right, Hans Ulrich? And so what we think when we speak about contemporary art, it's obviously not only a beautiful description of something, it's engaging with the philosophers, with the thinkers, it's engaging for something to change, but also, I must say, to keep these possibilities open, to keep choices open, right?
And of course, more and more people are also moving there. It is fascinating. I mean, the Camargue has always attracted artists, from Van Gogh, of course, to someone like Pierre Alechinsky, the last surviving member of the Cobra movement, who is now 90 years old and lives very near Arles in the Alps. And now, through your project, the whole new generation of artists are basically coming into Arles. What is interesting also is this proximity to artists you've always had. Ever since the 80s, there's always been friendships with artists when you began to collect and think about the LUMA Foundation. And you involve artists, not only in the core group, but in all the also structural elements. And last time in Arles, I saw for the first time this hotel you commissioned Jorge Pardo to do.
Right,
so you wouldn't have somebody who professionally builds hotel do the hotel, but a leading artist would invent a hotel and actually make research in the region. Can you tell us about that Jorge Pardo adventure?
Well, I met Jorge in Yucatan. Oh, it's not true. I met him early on at the DIA Foundation, but I think not many of you were born at that time. And I invited Jorge, after seeing him several times, to think completely hotel, because we are needing in Arles some place for hospitality. This is not at all the hospitality I was speaking before in the little presentation. It is really a place where you can mingle, where the artists can mingle, the collectors can mingle, the visitors can mingle, and we actually try to have this happen on every level of funds that you want to put into a room or not. And so it's a Gesamtkunstwerk, actually, of Jorge that we are opening in the spring.
And the Gesamtkunstwerk, of course, is also there with your archive of artists, because as you mentioned, it has a lot to do with archives. Mathieu Humery is in charge of that aspect of your project. And Annie Leibowitz is one example. So the presentation was just one aspect out of Annie's work, and there are going to be more exhibitions. But there are lots of other archives. You have Martin Parr's books. There is also, of course, the artists like Philippe Pareno, for example. It's going to be a room with his evolving archive. Can you tell us a little bit more about that idea of how archives are going to be there, are going to evolve?
Yeah, I mean, it's just something that we feel can be important, is to document every exhibition we have made, and then it becomes the archive. So you actually produce your own archive. All the examples Hans Ulrich gave are showing different aspects of this. It's true that we asked Philippe Pareno to do a gallery of all his works. I was collecting his work for years. There are things that are difficult to keep, and you certainly do not want to keep them in a storage. You just really want to reenact this, and it can be on the long term, because there's so much software that can be changed. It also includes movies, it includes bacteria, some living organism. So it's really interesting to have a space dedicated to Philippe, as an example, but which will permanently change, like the permanent revolution.
And of course, that leads us back to this idea, exhibitions are ephemeral, and for artists who create Gesamtkunstwerke, of ephemeral nature, there always need to be places where in the future one can experience that kind of practice, as we can do it for the generation of the 60s with the Dia Art Foundation. It's important that that can happen for the artists today, and that can then either be a space or it can be with Liam Gillick spread throughout the institution where Liam invents all these structural elements. Now, you mentioned also Benjamin Millepied, and I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit more about that, because that seems another kind of structural invention, that actually rehearsal happens and that you can rehearse different practices in Arles and then they can spread into the world. It's a very interesting model, and actually the public can attend the rehearsals, right?
Yeah. They can come and sit, and then there are still creations happening, and these will be premiered in a space that is the same than the rehearsal space. I mean, we tried that for 2 years, and it works well. It works well because it's a small town too, and we have space. We have much space, and to host the people who come during the Festival of the Photography that we also host, and for these type of activities. So every year we add something to our program until we will finish opening this resource building, this Frank Gehry building, which was actually imagined to attract people to the countryside, but the people who are really interested.
I think Rem Koolhaas said last year, the future is the countryside. Today we can say the future is Arles. Maja, thank you so much.